Okay, so welcome to the podcast version. This episode features, well, first of all, it features Jason Thomas, and then secondly, it's Nuno Loureiro. Now, the transcribed part of the statement given by Valente, that should be, I'm just having a look now, that should start at around 39 minutes, about there and abouts. So, if you want to just skip forward to that or anything, listen to the transcript, that's fine. But there is extra information in here. This is the unedited version of the video in audio format. So, if there is a bit of waffling, bit of going on there, apologies. It's just going to be more raw, sort of unedited version of it. But I hope you enjoy. Like and subscribe. Okay, the next person is Jason Ray Thomas. Now, Jason was, in some accounts, he was the Associate Director of Chemical Biology at Novartis, or on his LinkedIn, I believe he's put down as Senior Investigator 1 at Novartis Institutes of Biomedical Research. I'll pop that up, actually, so you can see that. I'll put that full screen. There we go. Okay, so what we'll do, we'll start with the case summary first. So, on the evening of December 12th, he and his wife were walking home after the first night out socialising with friends since his parents died a month prior. Jason was an only child, and both parents died in his arms. His mother first whilst being in a hospice, and his father an hour later of a heart attack. You know, this is incredibly sad, and it'd be hard enough for the strongest of people, especially being an only child and not being able to share that weight that's on him from this incident, and no one to share in his grief, and then to lose both parents so close together while still recovering, from the first one in such circumstances. I wouldn't wish this kind of emotional stress on anybody. Must have been horrific. So after the night out on the 12th, they both arrived home. They took care of the dogs, etc., and were heading upstairs, presumably ready for bed, when his wife found that Jason had disappeared. She called out for him with no response. She heard a bang from the front of the house. She recognised this as the mailbox closing. She ran out the driveway door and noticed Jason walking in front of the house. It was noted that she said the following: "We made eye contact." On this, she also noted that moment of connection meant Jason wasn't angry or upset. And she also noted it gave her some peace. She then went on to say, and this is a direct quote of hers, "That means something to me because I truly felt like he was just going for a walk, like he wasn't trying to get away." So he left the house at around 23:53, so 11:53 p.m. from the doorbell camera footage. She then tried calling him a number of times up until 12:13 a.m. Then fell asleep around this time. She woke at around 1:30 a.m. and Jason hadn't returned yet. She then realised that he had emptied his pockets of his jacket when he came upstairs. His phone and wallet were on the bathroom counter. Leaving the phone and wallet behind is a common theme here. We've seen it in the other cases. I mean, whilst the other ones had one of them had the phone wiped and everything, and leaving the possessions that you would imagine would be priority of them to take, and leaving them behind. Now, perhaps that's something that people do in an emotional distress moment, and this kind of thing happens. But then at the same time, if something was more sinister at play, that would be quite easy to fake. It would be quite easy to know that this is the standard thing that people do. So let's make sure that this kind of stuff is left behind because it fits a profile of someone who done X, Y, and Z. But we'll continue. This is just hypothesizing at the moment, and I'll probably save a good bit of that for the conclusion video. His watch was found in the mailbox, so presumably that explains why he accessed it. His wife searched the block surrounding the house looking for him, checking his regular walking spots. The police were called, and her initial response to the police was, "This isn't like him. He couldn't not come home. I think there is something wrong." I believe that's a direct quote of what she said. So the police carried out a search in the early hours of December 13th. Officers began canvassing the area in patrol cars, checking local CCTV, all the full sort of response that you would expect. By 11 a.m., they involved a canine team and a drone team. There was about 5 or 6 canines and about 4 drones. They find footage of him on one camera not far from his home, as quoted, he crosses the street right near a train station and set off up the railroad tracks. So I've done a calculation of this, and I've managed to pinpoint the rough location. I'll put this full screen, and you can see, I think the train station is actually just below here. Here's the railroad tracks up this way. And I think, was it this street here, I think, as well, that was noted as crossing. But I think it was up this direction was the direction it was heading, as far as I'm aware. Now, there are other elements to this disappearance, but given the updates on the 17th of March 2026, let's fast forward, okay? A body was recovered from Lake Quanapawit in Wakefield, and I'll show this as well on the screen here. So here's the lake, and actually the place he was pinpointed, I believe, was about here, just where the Wakefield sign is, where the E is, just about there, you can see. I wonder if I can get it zoomed in a bit more there. I know it's blurry, it's a screenshot from one. So about there, and there's the lake. Now, it was noted the ice on the lake started to melt about this time. And I tell you something that was interesting. I read on, I think it must have been a Reddit page where it was discussing this case, and someone said prior to them finding the body on March 17th, I'm sure I read this about then, that the ice has started melting, they need to check the lake. And it shows that local knowledge that people have, that obviously people locally would be invested in this story as well, wondering what's going on. And again, that small sort of community where they know the kind of situation about what's going on, where the likelihood is. And this goes back to the Chavez case, which I was saying about, in Los Alamos. It's a small, close-knit community. So, if people can kind of assume certain things in this scenario, in that scenario, if he didn't work at Los Alamos or other elements of it that were not true, that would have been raised for sure in an even more close-knit community like Los Alamos. So it's just worth noting, but let's focus on this, and I'll save any further ideas around that for the conclusion video. So the ice started to melt around this time, which is why they searched it then. This lake aligns with where he was last spotted also, as pointed out by the screenshot. In fact, I'll put that on small screen and then you can kind of see. So far, the police statement reports that no foul play is suspected. And I think everyone he knew is in agreement he was suffering very badly from the passing of his parents, which is totally understandable. But let's take a look at his scientific background, though, just for clarity. Seemingly at first, he's just a biophysics PhD with no relation to the space sector, like spacecraft construction, all the rest of it. But space travel is not only about craft engineering. There's certain biological factors that have to be considered in space, such as age-related degeneration, muscle atrophy, bone loss, spinal elongation, fluid shift in the body, being in zero gravity, and this also affects cardiovascular health as well. Even changes to your immune system, gut bacteria, radiation damage, and DNA damage. And there's numerous other factors biologically that has to be taken into consideration. So when we look at Dr. Thomas's research and see how it fits into these, he was the senior investigator. So taken from the LinkedIn, I'll tell you what, I'll pop this up on his LinkedIn page, and you can see the about section just below there. I'll put this full screen for you. So, lead and work alongside an integrated team experienced in biochemical, biophysical techniques, chemical synthesis, and mass spectrometry that bridges the gap between chemical concepts and biological execution. So I wonder if there's any connection here with the biological effects of space travel, or even some remote connection with non-human intelligence, perhaps, from that perspective. And I looked on his Google Scholar page. Again, I'll pop this on full screen. And his research primarily focuses on targeted protein degradation, PROTACs and E3 ligases. This is a major modern drug discovery strategy, using small molecules to recruit degradation machinery to remove harmful proteins. So also it focuses heavily on RNA, which is targeted small molecules. And, if this sounds familiar, think of COVID vaccines. But we're not interested in that topic. We're going to stick with what this is about in terms of relation to McCasland and the kind of UFO sort of area. Strangely, some of these do actually address some space-related issues, albeit indirectly. His research doesn't seem to mention about the effects in outer space, specifically the paper entitled Ubiquitin-Mediated Proteolysis of DNA Damage. This indirectly relates to the topic and also the age-related degeneration aspect by addressing mTOR signaling. So I think the basic concept is by stopping mTOR signaling, you can induce autophagy. Now, autophagy recycles the dead cells in your body, and in space-related age degeneration, this is actually increased as to what it is on Earth. You know, I'm not a biologist. This paper goes into a lot more detail, and it's probably beyond my remit of what I'm comfortable kind of going into in depth. But that's just a summary of the idea that it can be applied into different areas in like the space-related age degeneration. And here's a big but though. Okay, I cannot lie. He worked for Novartis, which is not a company who has regular government contracts. There was an experiment conducted by Novartis in conjunction with NASA, and this is quite interesting. It was the Novartis NASA Space Experiment Rodent Research 1, where Novartis partnered with NASA and sent genetically modified mice to the International Space Station to study muscle wasting in microgravity. But, and again, this is another point, Thomas did not work in the same department as this research was carried out. Even so much as I tried, I struggled to find any academics who collaborated with him that have associations with that kind of NASA research and that research department, and even government ones. And I looked through all his papers, and he has a fairly regular set of people who he does research with. I couldn't find any relation to it. I really couldn't. And I have tried pretty hard looking all these papers. So I'll show you on the full screen. All these check in certain names, like common ones that he consults, he writes papers with or under. I did struggle to find one. So further to this, there was a $14 million DARPA funding given to Novartis for RNA vaccine and diagnostics. But again, this is a different department to that of Thomas. And he was in the Novartis Institute for Biomedical Research, NIBR. There was only one overlap, and this was a 2012 Novartis RNA vaccine publication, which combined the vaccines and diagnostics, which was DARPA funded, department with the Novartis Institute for Biomedical Research. As I was literally looking into any link, I think for it to be some sort of valid link, I mean, statistically, you will find some connection between departments. You will. It's inevitable. But considering after all the searching I've done, there was only this one link. Yeah, even by chance, that's quite a low probability. You would expect more than that, just purely statistically. So I think it's safe to say that he wasn't working in conjunction with NASA or anything realistically to do with like any spacecraft manufacture, even the biological effects of that in space. I don't think. I mean, his research could be applied there, but it's for sure. But there was not that direct link. It's a bit like receiving research from elsewhere and just applying it in your department. He wouldn't need to be on any inside inner circle or any inside knowledge for this to be relevant to them or to carry out his research. And I think that therefore takes away any perhaps motive for anything sinister that's gone on in relation to the subject we're talking about. There might be another aspect that I haven't looked at, but as we're focusing purely on the UFO phenomena here in this situation and McCasland and that kind of thing, there's no link that I can find. So that's only considering the strong links that we can find. Beyond that of statistical chance, I think is the correct approach. And I think this is just purely a good example of this statistical chance link. And I feel looking into the academic and research background of Thomas is a dead end in this result, at least connected with the topic at hand, as I said previously. I mean, if there is enough interest, like in the comments, I could perhaps look for another link. But I think as that's not the main focus of the channel of this, the general scope of this channel at the moment, I mean that I that will change. I'm hoping to expand into different types of analysis and different concepts, different curiosities. But for now, anyway, it's not a direction. But again, if there was enough interest, that would be a plausible thing we can kind of look into further. So, I mean, he was the associate director of chemical biology of Novartis, so perhaps there is some other reason there. But again, Novartis isn't really known to have many government contracts, that many at all. So, on the face of it, this does look like a genuine tragedy, though. It does make me question the other cases where the phones and wallet were all left behind, as I mentioned previously. This is a common theme of this type of incident. But as I mentioned earlier, that's something that if that happens to if people do that kind of thing, that would be quite an easy aspect to manufacture, shall we say. So I honestly feel this is an example of a genuine tragic death. Suffer. I mean, him suffering with the loss of his parents, everything like that. I think this is genuinely just tragic. But there are elements that we can apply in the earlier cases that we've covered, and I'll reference this in the conclusion video. But it's not about the phone or wallet. It's something else that I kind of picked up on. Final sort of assessment of this one specific case. Again, I think it's a tragedy, and whilst I'm not using the plausometer at the moment, I think I'll save all that for the conclusion video because there's that many cases to consider, and I think in doing so we should consider this as each individual case initially and then piece it together at the end in the conclusion video to say, well, let's see how all this fits together at the end. Thank you. Like and subscribe and comment below. I'd love to hear any comments, any other ideas that you guys have got, or even if you want me to look into this a little bit further and see what we can get to. But I do feel this is just a genuine tragedy. Also, just to note that don't forget the podcast is going to be the second part of the podcast is going to be a combination of these 4 extended cases that's going to come to. I'm going to put it all together. It features a bit more detail, goes into each case slightly a bit more. Some cases more than others. Some cases don't require as much going into more than the video. Other cases it has a little bit of bonus information in there that might be quite interesting. But yeah, so definitely check out the podcast if you want to. You don't need to. It's just more supplementary to the video for a bit of background information. But also like and subscribe and put some comments below. It really does mean a lot when you guys do that. Even each individual like, I think, yeah, that's good. It makes me feel like it's kind of worthwhile doing this. Brilliant. Okay, so the next case is that of Nuno Loureiro, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. This one's weird. So on the surface of it, everything seems as a given, but there's some inconsistencies that kind of crop up and some sort of causes for concern. Okay, so let me explain. On the 13th of December 2025, Claudio Neves Valente carried out the Brown University shooting in Providence, Rhode Island. He then evaded police for, I think it was about 2 days, and drove up to Boston, and then that's where he shot Nuno Loureiro. He evaded police again for a further few days and went to a storage facility in Salem, Massachusetts, where he was found deceased from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, at this point, it's worth noting that he recorded 4 short videos, and whilst the videos aren't available, there are transcripts of this, and it was translated from Portuguese. So in the podcast version of this, I do narrate the full transcript, but including it in this video, it would make the video too long, I think, realistically. And it is available, but it's just something for the podcast that's worth checking out, maybe if you want the full transcript, or you can just look it up. So now this all seems pretty clear cut. Add in that these two knew each other I think it was about 30 years prior. They attended the same technical college together in Portugal. They're in the same class as each other as well. So, okay, this all seems legit. They knew each other previously. You can kind of see a trail of things there. But there are a few things here. So this was deemed premeditated, and the two hadn't spoke within those 30 years. So eyewitness reports clearly put Valente at the university at the time of the university shooting, and he's recorded the footage, as I say, in those 4 videos, and he clearly kind of makes reference to it. He mentions the auditorium and stuff like that, saying that he didn't want to do it in an auditorium, numerous things like that. So you can see that there is a clear reference to the Brown University shooting, so essentially him admitting this. This incident happened about 1600 hours on the 13th of December 2025, but it was reported that he scoped out the university beforehand on the same day, so from about, I think it was stated 10:35ish through to 11 a.m, then again from 1400 to 1500 hours. Now, after the Brown University shooting, apparently he totally managed to evade police for a couple of days, and unlike other shootings, similar sort of theme to this, he didn't immediately unalive himself, but instead he changed his plates to an unregistered out-of-state set of plates. I think they were registered in Maine, or unregistered in Maine, but they were from Maine, and I think they were 10 years out of date as well. And then over the course of a couple of days, he then evaded the police, then shot an unalived Nuno on the 15th of December at 20:30 hours. Then again, evaded the capture from the police for a further few days, which is when he records, I think the next day, the estimate was the time of death on the 16th of December, and then he unalives himself apparently in the storage facility that he rented in his own name as well, which I think is quite interesting. And he's discovered in that storage facility on the 18th of December. Okay, so now the parts I have issue with. He rented the car in Florida and drove all the way up to Providence, and he even rented the car in his own name, along with the storage unit in Salem, which apparently he had for a few years prior. There were rumours that he rented it just shortly before, but I think, again, that's kind of hearsay. I've not seen anything substantial to say that he only rented it just before. In the transcript, he mentions he rented that storage facility for a few years. So clearly he didn't care about hiding his identity, and presumably he probably didn't think he would make it out, alive, is what you could probably say from the university shooting. But yet it also shows some sort of foresight to gain unregistered out-of-state plates. So those two conflict with me and don't really sit right. Why would you not even hide your identity in the hiring of the vehicle, the hiring of the storage facility, but yet you would get unregistered out-of-state plates to move from one place to another? And I don't know how easy it is to get unregistered out-of-state plates in the USA, especially within like a few days' notice when you're wanted by the police. So it could be a case that he's acquired these beforehand, in which case, though, that really conflicts with things. And if he's acquired them last minute, how realistic is that if he's just carried out some sort of shooting? I mean, because this will be in the news all around there. And if someone's just turning up randomly after this kind of incident and saying, I want some unregistered out-of-state plates or something, they're buying them off Craigslist or something like that, then, that, I don't know, that would raise alarm bells. So that part really doesn't sit right with me in this case. So to say these plates haven't been used in 10 years, and I think they were registered previously when they were registered, they were main plates, but they were currently unregistered. So I did look up in violent crimes, and this is just a basic Google search, so I don't know how reliable these statistics are, unlike the other ones I use, which I go into a bit more depth. I think there's less information on this kind of thing, but in violent crimes, plate swapping occurs in 15 to 25% of planned violent crimes involving vehicles. Unregistered plates is much rarer, but there's no stats, and let alone unregistered out-of-state plates. Okay? Now, normally, any plates like this, the police would contact or trace the ownership to build a clearer picture of what's happened previously and what's occurred up to this point. And you would normally, I'm assuming you would normally get some sort of public release of how he acquired these, different things like that. Even just for future reference and to track down further motives, especially in some sort of like mass shooting event. So, but there wasn't any. There was no public release. This doesn't seem to have happened where they've traced it back to some sort of ownership. It's just going to stop there. So the mostly unclear part of this case, from my perspective, is the point whereby the Brown University shooting's carried out, and then until he's discovered in the storage facility on the 16th. That to me is where I think it's more situational sort of evidence that they kind of piece together. But we'll see as we proceed. Also to note that there are no eyewitnesses of him at Nuno's shooting. Like, nothing definite anyway that I can find. At the Brown University shooting, he wore a beanie with a face mask. There's an extremely clear description of his clothes. At Nuno's shooting, like incredibly like limited public clothing description. Like there's no kind of statement. I think the statement they released is just generally along the lines of general dark clothing and matches what he was wearing at the Brown University. Now, in the Nuno incident, there's no reliable CCTV. Well, none that was released to the public. So you can see CCTV snapshots that was in the media, but that's all from the university part or prior to that or something along those lines. And I think it was stated somewhere that that surveillance cameras in the area captured a suspect. But the public statement from the prosecutors at the DOJ stated investigators use vehicle movement reconstruction, timeline reconstruction between Providence, Brookline, and New Hampshire, ballistics linking the firearm, items recovered from Valente. So there's no clear mention in the DOJ statement that says anything about surveillance footage or any eyewitnesses. It's all just piecing it backwards, piecing it together. So in reality, there's no publicly confirmed statement about any CCTV or anything at Nuno's building or anything like such as that. You know, maybe this just isn't publicly released and it's behind the scenes, but you know, surely they would put that in the statement that we have certain CCTV. That was the official sort of statement from the DOJ. So also of note is a neighbour found Nuno in the foyer, but yet, you know, I'm quite surprised somewhere like a foyer like that houses a university professor doesn't have CCTV. Maybe that's, I don't know, maybe that's me not maybe that's the kind of differences between maybe USA and the UK or something like that, and it's hard for me to kind of grasp that. But you know, I would have thought maybe somewhere in Massachusetts that houses like a lot of academics, and I looked it up, and it seems to be an area prominent with doctors, academics, and that kind of thing, and professors and the like. I just would have thought maybe some sort of foyer would have CCTV there, but I could be wrong. And further to this, I did actually look up even previous rentals of the area, and I spent a bit of time seeing all the previous rental sort of thing. And interesting, I think that some of the apartments were about $700,000 or something for just like a 3 bed apartment there. But I looked at all these rentals and sales and to see if it mentions anything about CCTV in the foyer. I couldn't find anything, but it was nothing was really mentioned about the foyer anyway in these advertisements. So yeah, a bit of a dead end on that one. So, but let's play devil's advocate here, okay? It is an older building and it's primarily used housing academics and doctors, as I mentioned, okay? But because it's not really university owned, would it be less likely to actually have CCTV? Because these are all private apartments, so it'd be like a community thing to install that, as opposed to a university-based thing. So I also, you know, the foyer size as well, calculated as probably being about a few meters by a few meters, looking at the apartments for let and piecing it to the outside of the building. I think, yeah, that's what I came up with. It's only a few meters by a few meters, and it's quite an old building as well. So also another bit of devil's advocate here, given the time of day, 20:30 on an evening, it's a suburban, quiet sort of area. Realistically, what the chances are someone would be walking past at that moment or some possible eyewitness? Quite low. But then, I mean, to counter that, if you were going to carry out some deliberate incident like that, perhaps that would be the best time to do it because you'd know there's less eyewitnesses. So it 50-50 on that. Given the time of day in the neighbourhood, the likelihood of any sort of eyewitness, it just diminishes naturally anyway. So moving on. Quick summary of the main issues here up to now. Valente hiring a car in his own name, a storage facility in his own name, but then manages to retain unregistered out-of-state plates after the Brown University shooting. There's a clear description, this is the other point, there's a clear description of the Brown University shooting, eyewitnesses, CCTV, everything like that. No clear description of him at the incident with Nuno, no eyewitnesses, no CCTV. And it's only determined thus far from the Nuno shooting by ballistics, car location, and apparently phone location as well they took into consideration. Although all of those, I suppose if you were to manufacture something, could be manufactured though. So Next highlight is the transcript. Okay, so Valente makes clear references to the Brown University shooting. You know, whilst not directly mention it, it's obviously related. As I say, he mentioned something about the I didn't want to do it in the auditorium, such forth like that on the transcript, and it's quite clear that references that shooting, but he doesn't mention at all about anything to do with Nuno, which seemed to be a direct, like a direct targeted incident. So he doesn't mention anything about that in these 4 videos. And you'd think if he's making reference to that, then why wouldn't he do the same with the Nuno incident? So, you know, these are essentially his last words on camera, and he doesn't mention any explanation for that. I don't know. I don't. Again, that's quite strange. I feel that's quite strange to me, having read the transcript. You know, he does mention 2 instances in the transcript, but you know, are the 2 instances perhaps because there was 2 people unalived? Is that either person that was unalived at the university shooting, or is he actually referencing that one and the Nuno incident? I did also consider perhaps if there was another incident involving firearms in the area at that time, and perhaps it's coincidence, you know, he carried out that another incident and it's just been attributed to him. But bizarrely, and I suppose it's a good thing for American statistics, really, there was literally 0 other shooting incidents I could find around this time across 4 states of Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire. So if anyone knows of any other incident around this time in either of these, please comment, because that'd be quite interesting if there was one. But I couldn't find one. So as these seemingly are the 2 only firearm related incidents, it does add weight to the current theory that he carried out both attacks, and that these 2 incidents he states in the transcript could be referencing both of these, but they're not entirely coherent, the transcript of what he was saying. He also states in the transcript, I was almost confronted by a guy there that day who knew my license plates. I never thought it would take them so long to find me. So he believed he was already identified and they knew his plates. And yet he still remained at the storage facility and evaded police from the Brown University shooting. From when did I say? Was that the 13th of December until the 18th? That's quite a bit. And he also states that he had the storage unit held for 3 years, and yet there is a claim by law enforcement that stated it was only rented shortly before, as I mentioned previously. But that is hearsay. I've not found any substantial evidence to say that the law enforcement stated he held it only shortly before. He also says in the transcript as well, the stupid car is outside. Obviously, there is a record of my entry and there are cameras. Now, in similar cases, the police would normally release a timestamp of him entering the facility, and storage facilities 100% will have CCTV cameras. Like, I mean, you can't say definitely, but come on, it's a storage facility that holds people's belongings. They have insurance purposes whereby they have to have some sort of security mechanism in the storage facility. So why haven't these been released of him at the storage facility at those specific dates? Time-stamped are the dates that he went in and out, and yet these aren't released to the public, or I've not heard of any instance of these, of stills or any sort of CCTV footage coming out about this, about him at this point in time. So yeah, no stills, timestamps, no description of entry or anything like that of him entering the storage facility, which I find strange. You know, that kind of thing should be released. Judging by the transcript, though, he arrived there at 2200 hours. Not sure what day. Again, there's no definitive timestamps that have been released in association to when he filmed, when he shot those 4 videos. I mean, that would have, where's the data? Where's the metadata behind this to say this is a clear timestamp of when he recorded these videos? Here's also timestamps of when he entered the facility, or the rest of it. There's none of that. He states also, I hope to stay here for at least a few good hours without being found. This surely implies that they're onto him, and he thinks that they're onto him, but they didn't discover or recover him from the storage facility until 2 days after he died. Now, to play devil's advocate, you know, he does mention 2 instances, and there were 2 incidents that he supposedly carried out. And he does mention one, and I believe it's the second one where the first one he clearly states the auditorium. And he said this like, I think it's kind of implied the way this he tells it in the transcript, in the narration of this. He said essentially one was at close range, which aligns with the Nuno incident as well. You know, I checked the Brown University incident, and it doesn't seem either of those were at close range. But it's hard to gather any information on that specifically as well. He does mention his hurt eye in the transcript as well. He seems in shock about the hurt eye for some reason. You know, could this be in conjunction with Nuno shooting, or perhaps something more sinister? You know, why has he got a hurt eye or a damaged eye? You know, from nowhere. And he seems quite in shock with that as he's recording this initially at the storage facility. And as I say, don't forget, it's only the transcript that we have available to the public. There is the video, I think it was shown in the court case, but to the public, it's only the transcript. For a little spanner in the works, was he forced to do this video after the Brown shooting? And that explains the timeline difference. Or is it, again, play a bit of devil's advocate here? Is it probably, you know, more than likely just a stress related response, you know, through some sort of adrenaline crash along with a psychological breakdown, you know, prolonged over many days? Do strange things to your body, something like that, I would imagine. Look, there are a few things about this to me that don't add up. And it's the changing of the plates, having that foresight, or even managing to get them at the last minute. It's the timeline, the metadata behind all this stuff that's there, the camera, the video recordings. You've got the storage facility, which guaranteed would have CCTV, you know, or some sort of mechanism to monitor it. There's no eyewitnesses of the Nuno incident. There's no stills released apart from the Brown University one. There's no stills of him at the storage facility with a timestamp on, which, you know, I think that's kind of interest. Ultimately, it does beg the question at the back of your mind: did this happen? Obviously, he'd done the Brown University shooting, and was an opportunity seized by someone to think, okay, here's an opportunity, you know, to manufacture something a bit more sinister. Probably that's absolute pure speculation. And in the ultimate devil's advocate response to this as well, he clearly wasn't thinking coherently. He wasn't thinking straight. By evidence of his actions, to do something this awful, he wasn't coherent in his mind. So whilst things don't add up in a logical sense, that's probably something you would expect for such an illogical action like this. And then when you kind of add in conjunction with this of no reliable CCTV, no eyewitnesses, and it's just like, it's optimum moments that's worked out to just add an element there of doubt. And I don't know if, you know, it's totally within the realms of probability that this is just all coincidental, that there's been no CCTV at Nuno's, and like this metadata hasn't been released, and perhaps it was that straight cut that, you know, authorities didn't think it was necessary. But I do think something like the metadata behind, or the data behind the videos, could be revealing. What would the implication be if this was filmed before Nuno's death? And as far as I'm aware, all that's been said is there are 4 short videos found on December 18th. They've not stated recorded on this date. I mean, obviously recorded before he unalived himself, but it just says found on that date. So why haven't they looked into that data? Why is it worded in that specific way of found on the 18th as opposed to recorded on X date? You know, all these cases I'm trying to review in isolation so as not to skew my opinion until the conclusion video, which we should be the next one. The next one should be the addendum and conclusion. I've looked into all the cases so far that's come up, bar one recent one I've learned about, which is that of David Hicks. I might feature some of that in the addendum video, but there's so little known about that come to any conclusion is literally just absolute speculation on it. We don't know the cause of unalival on that, so or anything. So I think that would just be pure speculation. So the next ones I will do the addendum and conclusion video. Thanks for watching. like and subscribe. It all helps. And even watching videos through to the end, it's really appreciated. Okay, so this is for the podcast listeners. This is the transcript of the 4 videos that Claudio Manuel Neves Valente filmed whilst he was in the storage facility. There are some abbreviations that are noted on the transcript, like phonetic, unintelligible things, and like some certain actions like sighs and pauses. But I'll just read it how he probably would have read it, as opposed to including these in bracketed size and stuff like that, just so it kind of flows a bit better. So if you hear some stuttering as well, or any kind of weird thing, that's what he says. I'm going to read it word for word for the actual speaking part of this. Okay, so just a quick note as I'm recording this, I've had to go back to record this section just to forewarn you. Some things do sound like it's some sort of broken repetition, that I've said one sentence and perhaps I've made a mistake and I'm going back and rereading it. That's everything I say is directly from the transcript. So even the ums, the ahs, the pauses, the sighs, that's all from the transcript as well. And including the repetition where I might say something once, twice, 3 times, maybe one word different. That's all part of the transcript as well. Okay, here we go. Okay. As you can see, my eye's kind of fucked up. It's a shell round bounce there. I don't know if there are any kind of implications on the success of what I wanted to do or not. It's done. It was 6 months, man. Not 6 months, 6 semesters. I'd already planned this for a little more. It seems that I'm starting to see a bit better out my eye, but very little or almost nothing. The time for the final conclusions have arrived. The time for the final conclusions has arrived. It was all a little incompetent, but at least something was done. The only objective was to leave more or less on my own terms, and it's already long overdue, and at least leave that I wouldn't be the one who ended up suffering the most from all of this. No, that cannot happen. So if you don't like it, tough luck. Tough luck. There was also a lot of shit that I did not like and I had to put up with. So what has been done now? I'm in a storage space in Salem. I've had this here for 3 years, I think. I still have money. I would have money for a few more good years if it was in Portugal or a cheaper place. It would still be a long time, but I don't care. I've been here. I've been here without caring for a very long time now. To say that I was extraordinarily satisfied, no. But I also don't regret what I did. Honestly, my only regret is this thing in the eye. But it was really hard, man. I really have far, far too much inertia. But since I was almost confronted by a guy that day, not almost, actually was confronted, and he knew my license plate. I honestly never thought it would take them so long to find me, but look, I did one more. Basically, since I'm not sure, it was done at a relatively short distance and quickly. And I don't know exactly when I was hit in the eye, so I don't know exactly. I hope that at least the first one hit. I don't know. I don't care. It's all over. Now it's my time to leave on my own terms. And what else? I'm not going to apologise because during my lifetime no one sincerely apologised to me. The few times there was an appearance that it had happened, I later had access to the people privately. The conversations we had privately showed it was all fake. So they're not going to get anything from me. I did not like any one of you. I saw all of this shit from the beginning. I began to grow suspicious since I barely had conscious memories at the age of 3. At the age of 5, I was already sure. I saw all of this shit from the beginning, with a few exceptions, and I had hoped it would be negotiable as a matter of competence, morality. That's why I was a good guy, on every level. Not always, but almost always. And no. it isn't. There isn't. There isn't any type. It's completely non-negotiable. So go fuck yourselves. To hell with you. 3 emails should go out today. Tonight, people will receive them. Basically, I'm not saying anything else. And the thing is, with this eye situation, I even thought about doing it with glasses on. And then at the last moment, I thought, no, because the glasses fog up. This was at close range. And then it's noted UI, which is not comprehensible talk. When there's a section that says UI, that's basically, it's unintelligible, the transcript from the video. So then it continues. I was stupid. If I had done it, it wouldn't have. But I also have no interest whatsoever in staying here. That's it. UI. I also have no interest in being famous. I don't give a damn about how you judge me or what you think of me. The overwhelming majority of things that are going to be said, I can already imagine. In fact, I was already reading. I particularly like Trump's shit. To have called me an animal, which is true. I am an animal, and he is also. But I have no love. I have no hatred towards America. I also have no hatred at all. This was an issue of opportunity. I'd really like to thank you for the opportunity that you gave me, which was this one. And look, that's it. I don't have anything else to say. We are finished. I did not think it would be exactly on these terms, nor was I planning to come here. But this is an isolated place. I hope to stay here for at least a few good hours without being found. Even though the stupid car is outside, and obviously there is a record of my entry, and there are cameras and shit, but it'll probably be a few good hours. So the longer I stay here, the better. Let's see if I've got the balls to do this to myself now, because it was hard as hell to do it to all these people, man. It was hard as hell. I envy those who were born by nature, or not, or because of. I envy those who have no difficulty doing it, and these people exist. That's what I really envy. The rest means nothing to me. Let's see if I have the courage. It's 10 p.m. and that's it. And that's the end of video 1. Video 2 or 4. UI starts out and then into the video. When I say that I have no hatred toward America, I also have no love for it. You can barely see this. I have no love. Actually, I think that coming here, both times I did, was a fucking mistake. But to say that you all are extraordinarily bad, that would be neither bad nor good. It's the same shit. You are monkeys like the other ones, but I wanted to leave this. I was reading the recording I made. No, not reading, but watching it. I said I had no hatred, but I also have no love. It's the same thing with Portugal and most of the places where I've been. It says nothing. Wherever a guy goes, that's how it is. Let's see how this is going to work now. If I really have the courage to do this in these two instances, I needed a catalyst for both of them. But for the first one, it was the fact that I was confronted. And in the second, I also had one. You could say a little bit. So, and the video ends. Video 3. That I obviously would rather do anything else than this because it is hard. In particular, because I do not want to fail, right? I'm wondering if I should use one weapon, if I should use both. I already know that you are going to say that I'm mentally ill or some shit like that. That is all nonsense. That is all bullshit excuses. You are, those are all excuses for you to fuck whoever you don't care about. I'm sane. And then the lights go out in the video. Hey, those lights are just beginning to turn off. I'm sane and my eye seems like it's starting to, it's because it's dark. He closes his right eye twice. Yeah, it's fucked up. I'm sane and I've always been, more or less. No one is perfect. But in my take on all this is that I think the world cannot be redeemed. To sum it all up, that is it. I do not even know if I'm going to leave this here, but even if I delete it, it's on an SD card. It's going to be a little hard. I want to know if you're going to post this. Maybe I prefer that you don't. And I don't care at all about being famous, having a legacy and shit like that, manifestos and fucking stuff. I have absolutely no patience for that. Even though I would have a lot to say and write, I don't care. I'm not going to give you the right to that. Video ends. Video 4 of 4. Just one more scene. It seems like someone over there said that I was saying that I was Allah Akbar or some shit like that. I do not remember having said anything. If I did say something, it must have been some kind of an exclamation. Because I thought that one, I never wanted to do it in an auditorium. I wanted to do it in a regular room. And I had plenty of opportunities, especially this semester. I had plenty of opportunities, but I always chickened out. And I already explained why I did it this time. So it all went wrong. I think that outside is what turned out best. But when I entered the auditorium, basically I only saw one guy down there. If I even saw him initially, and I thought, fuck, it was, and I must have made an exclamation like, oh no, or something like that, to express that it was empty. That is, if I said something like that, I thought that the people had left because they were all kind of stupid. There is an emergency exit on the lowest right side. They all of those people that were hiding under the table or whatever the hell, they could have perfectly left through there. I thought that they had. That was what happened when I was outside, which I assume is where it turned out best. But maybe not, actually. Because when I left, I didn't see anyone there anymore. I assume. I thought they had all left through there. But then I realized that no, that they were all actually hiding under the chairs, and it was hard to see, but that's it. Now that should be everything. And the video ends. Okay, so a few extra notes on this. After reading it through, you can see there is one section that says that he's explained everything. On one of the lines on the fourth video, he says, I had plenty of opportunities, but I always chickened out, and I already explained why I did it this time. So that's interesting that I can't find the source of the explanation. In fact, when I look this up, there doesn't seem to be any explanation about what's happened. And yet, in his video transcript, he explains that he has explained this. I think looking at the transcript, he's very certain that, you know, he has done the Brown University shooting. That's a given. We know all the evidence is there. But in terms of the actual related Nuno Loureiro incident, then I don't know. There doesn't seem to be much in here about that. A lot of it is about the university, and he does mention the second incident. And he said there was a little bit of a reason for that. But again, is that related to this, or was there something else and this is coincidental that this has happened? I don't know. He doesn't really go into any detail about the Nuno Loureiro incident. So that's why I find this quite interesting, the transcript, because I can't see anything conclusive in there that says about that, but there's definitely conclusiveness about the Brown University shooting in there. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Like and subscribe, guys.